Patrick, had gone to Vietnam again and had returned again 2 months later. I called Cho. I'm in Tripler Army Hospital. Are you okay, Patrick? Yeah, they're just checking me for a day or two. I lost about 10 pounds and I have a sore ankle, some nutritional needs, and some cuts and scratches. One of them near infected, but I had it treated over there. I had to walk a long, long way, Cho. You carried me on your wings again. I'm coming right over. She arrived. Patrick, what happened over there? I'm not supposed to say, but I'll show and tell you more when I get out of hearing range here. In short, I rose from the ashes of a dead helicopter, all shook up, but well enough find a way through a very large and spreading inferno and walk a long way back through the jungle. I'm fine, but I'm kind of all tired out now. Damn, she swears. Yeah, and double that. That was too close, Patrick. I was the only survivor of the crash. Miracle, man. Thank your lucky stars. Thanks, stars. How did you walk on a sore ankle? I only had it near the end, and so I found that walking on my heel helped, plus making my bootlaces very tight. I'm sleeping here. Okay. Here's the report.
Run by its hands-on general, Magic Dragon, had a military arm of its own but could also call upon any of the armed services, and so it was in a near, overreaching operation deep inside Cambodia that the Marines and their long-distance choppers were employed along with the IAs. That they all had their targets pinpointed ahead of time was always the best strategy. But even more so for this mission since they could only engage for about 30 minutes and still have enough fuel to make it back from where they weren't even supposed to be. It all went well enough, but near the end a report of a well-hidden supply depot complex came in. The metal detection software had gone wild. There was a supply station in the Cambodian jungle, with perhaps a large ammo depot. We, more as the IA observers, still had firepower left, as well as more fuel, we being only 3, including the pilot, and so we were elected to veer off to investigate, meaning to put the place out of business, while the copter fleet turned and headed back toward Vietnam. We found the depot site and sent most of our missiles into it, but just as we were preparing to leave, took a really bad hit from something very luckily or accurately fired at us from the ground. We were in a half-controlled descent. Power gone, but the rotors still whirling from the downward rush, which would end neither in a soft nor a full crash landing, but tending toward hard, which was slightly less than a crash. We saw the depot's ammo dump blow very large and sky high, And although this destroyed all of the guards and forces on the ground, we were coming down about 600 meters in front of the blast. The jungle for kilometers around would soon be in flames. I tightened my belts and closed my side door. We seemed to land upright, but it was much too fast and hard. And so we tipped. The main rotor broke and sliced through the pilot's cabin, killing him instantly. The other door gunner's belts broke, or were cut, and he flew out, the copter crushing him beneath it. I released my belts and climbed out my door, which was now on the top of the heap, wondering how long it would be before the curious and angry enemies would come to see what had happened to their regional supply depot. I had to get through the inferno, onto the other side of the depot, where every road would lead toward home. I moved laterally, about a quarter kilometer north, the heat still very intense, even backing off somewhat, at times, and there it was, a gap in the flames, possibly due to a wet or swampy area. This was not a time to wait around, and so I endured the heat while splashing through the wetland, latrine sewer, or whatever it was, running until the air was bearable, then dropped to the ground and looked around for a while. Monsoon season had not yet begun, and so the jungle, though ever moist, was relatively dry. It was all catching fire so quickly that it threatened to engulf me within a matter of minutes in the firest storm of all hells. There were two one-lane paths serving as roads coming into the back of the loading docks. From the tire marks and the dirt chutes, it seemed that I was on the inbound path, and then I saw a signpost, its unreadable wordage on the other side, facing away from me, confirming this to be the path for arrivals. I don't like taking a path that has incoming traffic, and so I would soon cut through the jungle a short way to get on the outbound path, which no one else would be traversing for quite a while. Meanwhile, I placed explosives and a tripwire on the inbound path, which might lead any enemy survivors to believe I had taken the path. No one could miss that a chopper had crash landed. I tried to call the copter fleet on my ground radio, but got nothing but static. Well, there was no climbable canopy that I could be plucked off of. Anyway, I was on my own. No one knew. Over 100 kilometers to go. Had to put some distance in between while I was still fresh and energized, but not overdo it. Then walk on steadily only through the deepest night and sleep long by day. For not only would the jungle day roast one alive, but the Clem Marouche would be about. I was now on the outbound path for departures, but this didn't mean that no one would be coming this way, especially after the big blast, which meetings thought was still a disagreeable feeling. but Alike approaches from behind me even less. I checked my boots. I like tight boots, for they give a better feel for the ground, and one can't always see too well at night. I tightened them. One boot had a slight cut. I patched it with all-purpose tape. My canteen was full, for now, and I drank deeply, then ran like the blazes. Once again a boy on the cross-country team. The sun was setting. This was the last evening that I'd use for travel. I just didn't want to stick around the scene. Much later I slowed and stopped to eat. I had a few days of MREs, meals ready to eat, and after that the jungle would have to feed me. I walked briskly through the night, when possible, still high on adrenaline, but kept 10 meters off to the side of the path. I didn't need any surprises. I made good time. I heard a truck oncoming from ahead, its driver unaware of the traffic pattern, which was common in the third world. I dropped and froze, my camouflage making me part of the foliage. I really should travel further from the path, I thought, but if I did I would hardly be able to see it. The truck passed. I waited a while. Sunrise was nigh. I headed into the jungle to find a place to sleep, finding 2 good places, but proceeding on to a third, just to be safe. I had no guard. I would either be found, by a lucky fluke, or not, and so I slept soundly, for that's what I needed. I slept 12 hours through that steamy day, in the most shade I could find. I didn't resist the heat and the sweat but made friends with it. It was now early evening, and way too soon to move, and so I remained, eating 2 meals, and finishing my canteen. I would spend the next 2 hours refilling it by swiping dew from the broadleaves. I had not come across any pure water sources yet. I heard sounds from what must have been a village off in the distance somewhere. They would not come here, and didn't. I surveyed my equipment. Most of it had remained. 1 small pack of explosives, pistol, knife, a useless radio, 2 more days of MREs, no ID. As usual, spare socks, bullets, jungle ills bills, matches, some coins, a pad and pen for taking intelligence notes, antiseptic, a small flare, and a survival pamphlet. I had always dreamt of traveling light, with no big heavy pack. Now my dream had become true. Then I heard the Rouge out there, probably out on a local reckon to secure the night around their camp. They went off the path, to a good practice, but not as far into the jungle as I was. After they returned, an hour later, I waited a few more hours. At midnight I was off. I might manage to go 7-8 kilometers a night, on average. Considering the slow-going portions, I began to slowly add edible vegetation to my diet, as there are reasons to eat other than taste. All went well for 2 more nights and days, the jungle food fully supporting me now, but I was now stuck. The whole Clement division was getting on the move somewhere nearby. I stayed glued to my deep spot for 3 days, until they were long gone, which gave me more time that I needed to think. And so I thought about everything. First about my journey. It was really beyond me how I would ever make it, for after the long jungle trek there would be too many villages and clearings before I could get to the river and swim across it. Well, all I had to do was to travel and see. Quite an unlikely proposition. It was not that long ago that I was a 16-year-old boy who had filled the walls of his room with scenes of faraway places from National Geographic magazine, and now I was, well, really far away. course Magic Dragon would know that a helicopter had been lost. Strangely, it had not blown up right away, but the fuel was leaking, and it would go to blazes, and this within a larger blaze. He would indeed know where we were headed. We both knew that he could not come to me, and that I wouldn't have stuck around anyway. This forced rest was good for me, for my legs had been dehydrating, just as what could happen when playing a long match of tennis on a hot day. It had been days since I'd found the last rivulet, and the dew could not keep up with my needs. And then it rained for a day, which was as cooling and refreshing as one could imagine. It seemed that I drank gallons of it. I was restored to my old self just in time to move on with a full canteen. 4 more days passed. I was still energized by the walking, though perhaps having lost about 7 pounds. Night was my friend. I could even see the stars sometimes. Those ancient fires of home. Where those stars? I thought. But what the heck was I doing on a planet with so many war zones? Every so often I would stop and listen to hear them before they heard me. Nothing, usually. Then a mother and her children, at a watering hole, up ahead. Even though it was late evening, I, too, now desperately needed water. I waited, but ever more villagers kept coming. After an hour of no one, I rag. A woman appeared suddenly, quickly running off when she saw me. The whole village would soon know. So I backtracked for many kilometers, erasing half of my recent progress. They would still come, but eventually. So I headed deep into the jungle at a left angle to the road path. Just before dawn I intersected the path that I had once identified as the inbound path to the depot. Well, what else could I do but take it? I was known on the other path, but this would soon turn into a legend left far behind. I stepped up my base, expecting to pay dearly for it in lost energy. I found a sleeping spot, this time making sure it was 4 times removed from the path, then collapsed, exhausted and full of thirst, sleeping 16 hours. The rain saved me again. I floated awake and drank the elixir from the sky. It took me another day to regain my strength, aided by untasty jungle salad. I walked for 3 more nights and then the jungle began to thin. I went back and then sat there for a day, not wanting to leave it. I needed a miracle. Another day and night went by. I was tired anyway. I had a Cambodian hat that I'd found along the way somewhere, but my skin was not the right tone. Although I could possibly work on it, I would have to find the right clothes, too. Yet it wasn't going to work, for people would approach me, and then the jig would be up. A better scheme would have to present itself. One morning, when I was lost in the jungle's heart of darkness that was called the rainforest to soften its menace, I had to find the trailhead where the path resumed after a large and recently cleared open field that the Khmer were going to use for something. It wasn't a place to be seen wandering through, for one, nor wasting time trying to find an entrance that was probably covered by bush. For two, I needed information. I waited for hours. No there. I waited some more. Then way across the large clearing some lynx-like cats came out from the jungle, and I made note of the spot. Here I would find the trail. I dashed across and there it was. I entered, all the jungle noises resuming, the odor of dead vegetation returning. I walked on for about 5 kilometers. I shouldn't have during the day, but I was out of water and also needed to put some distance on the path. few kilometers later, the bird sound suddenly stopped, and so I rushed silently off the side of the trail, deep into the rainforest. The birds knew that someone was coming, which may have been just me, but they had tolerated me so far. It had to be a group. I never found out who they were, but they had to be peasants or enemy military. I camped for the rest of the day at the fifth good spot off the trail, taking no chances. I emerged 4 hours after sundown. From here on, every path would lead towards home. The ground was getting spongy. Large banyan trees began to appear, as well as cedar and cypress. A swamp was near, but so then might be dengue fever. This drainage basin from the mountains of what were really very large hills would have good stream water up ahead, beyond the deadwood. And so it did, the place looking harmlessly pleasant and sylvan, here in the land of the killing fields. I crossed the rock field to gain the stream, deftly jumping from one to another, which seemed safer than walking slowly. I could not misstep. An ankle injury would do me. Here I drank and stopped a while, to allow time for rehydration. I would need more than information to carry me to river, after which Vietnam began, but perhaps the general and his DIA troops were out there, somewhere, but I heard no rotors. Coincidence was too much to hope for. From the bird's eye view at the top of the mountain, I would plot my next 50 kilometers onto the horizon, keeping out of sight. Last night I had walked right into a temple, but it turned out to be a deserted ruin. I was still as fit as my younger self, who was on the cross-country team, but here I was on the trail of madness and death.
Onward, we guide thee, we must carry thee, where illumination beside thee.
Nothing happened for a few days, and then I heard the choppers, about a kilometer to the north. My radio had gotten soggy. It was now more than useless. I took off like a bat out of hell, remaining well inside the edge of the jungle. The choppers would not normally land, unless one or more had something to do by the hands of soldiers, but this was rare, as well as an invitation to trouble. The choppers had found the Rouge and were engaging them near the village they were taking, but the choppers were not going to land. When it looked like they were just about finished mopping up, I told myself, this is it, do or die, and so I sent up the flare. Since they might think it was some kind of a trap, I ran out and presented myself in the open, in my mud-dried fatigues, and gave the special salute, gun with both hands at once. They circled, looking closer, but wary. I brought up both arms and hands to my forehead in salute. Time and time again, I noted them looking through binoculars. They paused. I was a sitting duck if there was still any rouge left around. I used my knife to carve some letters into the ground. My short form ID. They looked. I waited, and waited some more. They landed. Now I will always wonder if I could have made it through the villages and clearings at night, moving like the wind and going like water. When the fleet landed back at Magic Dragon's Field Command, he came out to inquire about the mission and whether the head count was intact. The pilot trudged over, acting puzzled, relating that while no one had been lost, they seemed to have gained someone, and how could their number be at fault? But no one could really put one over on the general, who said to the air in between us, without seeing me,
Mister, you're late again, but I am considering it as leave time to make up for it. Welcome back. It was that woman near the drinking hole that told everyone, and there by me as well, for I have ears everywhere. I knew you would switch to the other path. Come out, wherever you are, and join me in my tent for a drink.